Welcome to the Awesomers.com podcast. If you love to learn, and if you're motivated to expand your mind, and heck, if you desire to break through those traditional paradigms and find your own version of success, you are in the right place. Awesomers around the world are on a journey to improve their lives and the lives of those around them. We believe in paying it forward, and we fundamentally try to live up to the great Zig Ziglar quote, where he said, "You can have everything in your life you want if you help enough other people get what they want." It doesn't matter where you came from, it only matters where you're going. My name is Steve Simonson, and I hope you will join me on this awesomer journey.
If you're launching a new product manufactured in China, you will need professional, high-resolution, Amazon-ready photographs. Because Simo Global has a team of professionals in China, you will oftentimes receive your listings photographs before your product even leaves the country. This streamlined process will save you the time, money, and energy needed to concentrate on marketing and other creative content strategies before your item is in stock and ready for sale. Visit simoglobal.com to learn more, because a picture should be worth 1,000 keywords.
You are listening to the Awesomers.com podcast episode number 55. And as the tradition has been well established now, all you have to do is go over to awesomers.com/55 to find all of the relevant show notes, details, links, and in this case, a link to the very special book that is being released today by our special guest, Rick Cesari. Now, Rick has helped major brands, including brands you've heard of, GoPro, George Foreman Grill, and others, put together these billion-dollar brands, all through response advertising, direct response advertising as we like to call it. His current book that he's just released and now available is called Building Billion-Dollar Brands, and it aims to put valuable knowledge of the big brands in the hands of inventors, small business owners, entrepreneurs of any kind, Amazon sellers, e-commerce guys, and others to create innovative, successful marketing campaigns. Now, Rick is a best-selling author, speaker, and consultant, and he's a brand strategy guru for sure. And we're lucky that Rick today is bringing us his expertise to talk about branding and video marketing and so much more. Today's a very special episode because we're going to do a part one episode of a two-part series with Rick, and these are both long-form interviews. And we talk about Rick's origin story mostly today, and two of the brands, which include a little discussion about the Juice Man, which was one of Rick's first brands, as well as the Sonicare toothbrush, which he participated in building that brand, and the George Foreman Grill. These are powerhouse brand names. And then in our series tomorrow, we're going to talk further about even more. So this is the first in a two-part series. Buckle up. It's going to be exciting. Tell a friend. This is prime time stuff. Let's giddy up. Hello, Awesomers. It's Steve Simonson, and today I'm joined by my very special guest, Rick Cesari. Rick, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to it.
Good. As a matter of just housekeeping, we need to establish for the audience if I pronounce your name right or wrong, because my record's not great.
It's Cesari.
Ooh, I got it wrong. Dang it. I swear.
Most people do. Don't worry about it.
The fact is, full disclosure to the audience, Rick just said his last name in the last 30 seconds probably to me, and that's the lack of retention I have. So my apologies, but you're in good company because it's the majority of the time I get it wrong. So first of all, Rick, I've already read in the bio. The people already kind of have a general big picture sense of you, but in your own words, kind of tell us, where you live today and what takes up your time day to day right now.
Okay, so right now I live in Seattle, Washington. I ran a direct response marketing agency for over 25 years based in Seattle here. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go on and some of the different projects and brands I help build. Sorry, I have a cuckoo clock in the background.
No problem. That's a new sound effect we've added in Awesomers. Anytime Rick says something that we want to question, you'll hear that cuckoo sound. So keep your ears open. Go ahead, Rick.
All right, so it's worst right now just because it's the top of the hour. But anyway, so I wound down the agency about a year ago and am more focused on doing writing, consulting, and helping companies that are looking to launch a product or want to grow their business, help them do strategy, and mainly from the standpoint of doing direct-to-consumer marketing.
Yeah, and that is such an important part of the equation. A lot of people, they get confused about different marketing techniques. Well, I'm on the internet, so I just do internet marketing. Well, at the end of the day, direct response marketing, whether you do it on TV or the internet, when you're trying to get their audience to actually make an immediate action, like a buy, that's direct response marketing. Would you agree with that, Rick?
Oh, absolutely. And what I tell everybody, I like to talk about omni-channel marketing and multi-channel marketing, but all of it is done, just like you mentioned, under the umbrella of direct response, direct marketing. I'm always trying to, you've built some successful businesses. I'm always trying, if you spend $1 on advertising, you want to get $2 or $3 or $4 in return. And that's really how you can build a big successful business, by having that mentality and always thinking from a direct response standpoint.
Without a doubt, it's just as a contrast to the awesomers out there listening. Another type of marketing that would be a contrast in my mind to this would be just general awareness marketing, right? When you see the big toothbrush company who's like, hey, we got the best toothbrush, just know about us. That's a different thing than go here and buy my toothbrush right now.
Yeah, and,
And
and basically, if you had to really break it down to the basic fundamentals of the difference between when you call awareness, that's also called brand marketing. Basically, they try to entertain people. They aren't trying to get the viewer to take a specific action. Whenever we do some type of direct response advertising, we're always have some type of offer or reason for people to either go to the website, call an 800 number, download, a lead gen piece of information. So there's always some type of offer involved in direct response.
yeah, and I think that's a very good breakdown, kind of the contrast between the two. Both can be important, but for me, as a small business guy, and even my biggest stuff would only be modestly considered medium. Even at 100 million bucks, that's still a Scooby snack compared to the big brands. I'm all about trying to figure out the ROI on my spend, right? I don't have the luxury of saying, I'm just going to put this $1 million into branding, and I'm hoping people will know my name more as a result of that $1 million. No, I put the whatever amount, I want the money back.
Yeah, absolutely. And really that's the secret to a lot of the brands and products we're going to talk about today, is none of them started out with big budgets. They all started out as small businesses, and we were able to find some type of advertising channel where they could get a return on their investment. And then what they would do is take that money, put it back into advertising, and that's how they would grow the business. And there's very few companies. I mean, if you're already have enough money to spend $1 million a year or month, whatever, on brand advertising, then you've already reached a level of success where you're kind of beyond, they don't need your or my help, really. So.
Yeah, I understand that well. Listen, you have such an amazing background that we're going to dive into some of that origin story kind of right from the beginning and carry on through to some of the amazing accomplishments you had. But we're going to do it right after this break.
Catalyst 88 was developed to help entrepreneurs achieve their short and long-term goals in e-commerce markets by utilizing the power of shared entrepreneurial wisdom. Entrepreneurship is nothing if not lessons to be learned. Learn from others, learn from us. I guarantee that we will learn from you. Visit catalyst88.com because your success is our success. Hey, giddy up.
Okay, guys, we're back again. Steve Simonson here. Rick Cesari.
Rick Cesari.
Ooh, I did it again. Cesari. That A.
I know, everyone wants to make it a long A.
Yeah, that would be easier on me. Rick Cesari.
Yes.
All right. Good Lord. I'm going to have to go to the editing bay and get this one fixed. Thank you again, Rick, for joining us. I really respect, a lot of the accomplishments you had. And I love just kind of your general nature of how you are trying to kind of work with and help entrepreneurs get better. And that's something I really respect. So thank you for doing that on behalf of all the entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah, no, it's really, I feel like after all of the successes I've had over the last 25 years, I really get a lot of gratification of working with people who are starting a business or have a business and are just looking for some answers, and any knowledge I can share, it just feels good.
It does feel good. I have a similar feeling when I'm able to impart a little a lesson learned or maybe even wisdom And the best part is it doesn't really require a lot of calories burnt on my part, right? It's kind of like, hey, here's a story. It happened to me. I don't know if it's applicable to you, but hopefully it helps. And
Yeah, no,
that's
absolutely.
nice.
And usually what I find, and you probably find the same thing, and I don't do it for this reason, but as you do that more and more, I don't know, it just creates a snowball effect and things come back to you in unexpected ways. And it's just a nice situation when you're able to do that. So.
This is, again, I repeat this often. It's always mentioned at the top of the show. Zig Ziglar says you can have everything you want in your life if you help enough other people get what they want in their life. And that's that's what a guy like Rick does, is he spends his time helping other people get what they want. And then that little, the magic law of reciprocity, whatever, it just kind of does its job, and opportunities show up. So Rick, let's go back to the very beginning. Where were you born?
So I was born in White Plains, New York, which is about 30 miles north of New York City. And I grew up there till I was 15 years old, kind of had an idyllic childhood. We had an acre property with a little pond on it. I had 7 brothers and sisters, and everything was just great. But then when I was 12 years old, my dad, who was only 46 at the time, passed away from a heart attack. So you can imagine a single mom with 8 kids.
Wow.
And it all of a sudden, life changed pretty dramatically overnight. And we had a little grocery store that my dad ran. And it's interesting because there's a lot of some parallels with what Amazon's doing today with grocery delivery. You always hear there's no new ideas. One of the things that we did at our grocery store was we would do free deliveries. And that's one of the things I helped out with as a teenager, is people would call in their order. We would box up the groceries, and we had a panel van, and we would deliver it out to people's houses. And so this is a concept that's been around for a long time, just nobody was really able to take advantage of it like they do now. And, this morning my wife was just ordering from Instacart. It made me remember about how I used to do that when I was a young teenager. So I learned business. My father was always entrepreneurial. I learned, I guess, to be entrepreneurial, but life really did change. And when he passed away, we stayed in New York for another couple of years, but then my family moved down to Daytona Beach, Florida. We knew some people that were down there, kind of a big change.
Yeah.
And I stayed there in high school. And again, when I was a senior, I had a really good friend, and he and I decided that we would become dentists. And so when I went to college, I went back up north to a small school in Pennsylvania called Westminster College and studied biology. So I actually have a BS degree in biology. I never studied marketing
Fascinating.
traditionally in school. And my friend went on to become a dentist, and he's a dentist today in Ormond Beach, Florida. And I kind of after college, I moved back to Daytona Beach, and I was a little bit tired of school. So I became a bum for a year, and I was a bartender and a lifeguard. But I was motivated to be successful and make money. And I knew that both of those things, while fun when you're young, really weren't long-term careers. And I started reading a lot of books, 2 types of books, motivational books, and also books on how people became successful or made money. And one of the things that I always kept stumbling across is a lot of people or wealth had been built through real estate. And so I started reading a lot of books about that, going to seminars. And I went to a seminar, and I'm just to give your listeners a time frame, and also it'll show them kind of how old I am. This was 1985. And I went to a seminar, did what the person told me, went out, bought a house, sold it in 2 weeks, and made about $12,000. And at the time, that was like $1 million.
Lottery, baby. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I think a minimum wage back then was $3 an hour or something. So that was a huge amount, and I was hooked. And I wanted to just keep going out and doing that. But the person who was running the seminars, I was very grateful for what happened. So on my own, I just called up a local business magazine called Florida Trend. I don't even know if it's still around. Basically told them the story of this person. They ran an article about him, and that free PR helped him gain credibility, but also helped him in the seminar business. So he asked me if I wanted to help him with marketing, and that's how my marketing career got launched. And at the time, again, this is going to sound funny to some of your listeners, the main way we were promoting the real estate seminars was using newspaper ads. And we would go from city to city, And basically, I call this category of marketing. We're going to talk about lots of different products. For lack of a better word, get rich quick. And it's not, don't take it the wrong way. That's kind of not what we're doing. It's just kind of a category I call, there's lots of information type seminars out there. And so one of the things we did, there was another real estate seminar based in California called Robert Allen Nothing Down. And he was one of the first people to start using television to drive people into these free seminars. And we were seeing maybe 100 people at our seminars. He was seeing 500, 600, 700 people at his. So we said, we're going to make a half-hour TV show. And this is the very, very cutting edge of infomercials, direct response. The reason it came about, not to go into too much detail, is President Reagan deregulated television. Before, you could only have 8 minutes of advertising in every hour. He deregulated it, and it opened up to the half-hour advertising. So it was really through the real estate business that I learned how to do direct response marketing, direct-to-consumer marketing, because it's a very, if you do any type of direct marketing or run any type of business, at the end of the day, there's a set of numbers that you follow that can run the business. And when we were using newspaper ads, we had a formula that if we could get 10 people in the room for $10 per head, we knew that when we spoke to them, we could convert a certain number, and then we knew it could be profitable. Well, TV took that metric and really turned it upside down, because it was the early days of direct response TV, just like the early days of the internet or early days of Amazon. It was a lot easier to make money before those areas matured a little bit. And we were seeing people in the room for, $5 a head, $1 a head, and seeing literally thousands of people in 1 week. And we were able to build up the seminar business to one of the largest in the country in about 2.5 years. And let's just say I didn't agree with the guy who was running the seminars approach. It was a little dishonest. And so I left. And actually, that's when I moved out to Seattle. And I did a couple projects. I was a partner. And feel free to ask any questions along the way.
Yeah, I do have one question. So it's a remarkable amount of growth, over the course of just 2 years to kind of take that newspaper direct response. By the way, for those listening at home, what Rick described is just a simple funnel, right? You put an ad in there, somebody comes in, you try to convert them and get them to the seminar and buy whatever the seminar's selling. This is a normal funnel. This is nothing new. I could actually imagine my daughter listening to this podcast and going, "Dad, what's a newspaper?" But that's a story for another time. So, but it is fun to reflect back on this idea of, the very beginning days of infomercials, when probably the leads were cheap and the airtime was plentiful, right? It was probably a lot easier. Is that how you found it to be at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. And, whenever there's a way that's easy for people to make money, it attracts honest, ethical people, but it also attracts the opposite. And so, and usually that's what ends up, I guess, killing the goose that lays the golden egg. There's a lot of people that would take advantage of being able, they overpromise, underdeliver, and some are just outright crooks. And so that always happens in every industry when it's new and before things sort out. But yeah, this was a time that I would say was the golden age of television direct response from, and we'll talk about some of the projects that are products that we helped launch that way. But I moved out after doing the real estate seminars. I moved out to Seattle here, and a friend was in the fishing business, and we did a project together. One of the things, again, this is a little thing people say, well, how do you find products or projects and things? And again, this is a little outdated, but I used to always go in the library and look around in different sections. And in this case, we looked in the, how to make money section, and I knew I had been successful doing real estate. And I said, well, why don't I try that in the stock market? And I found a book called How to Make $1 Million in the Stock Market, called up the author, and we basically made a half-hour TV show, but and this is an important lesson, because you'll see some lessons that I did way back in 1985, I used when we started marketing GoPro in 2011, 12, 13, and help me, because you said a funnel's a funnel. And the distribution channels have changed somewhat, but the basic marketing principles have stayed the same. And that's really an important point that I try to convey to a lot of people.
And let me just pop in there for a second, Rick, because I think that is such a really relevant point. It doesn't matter if this was the dawn of infomercials. Today, you might consider Facebook a very similar concept, right? Facebook's still at the very early stages, where relatively speaking, the inventory's, cheap. Now, it was cheap 5 years ago. It was less expensive 5 years ago, but, it still has reasonable availability. And as the big brands come in, and as some of the hucksters come in, we've recently, there's a story about somebody selling, kind of Amazon seminars in kind of that, instead of the business opportunity space, which is respectable, and there's a lot of good people doing stuff, the guys who are just scam artists and
Yep.
slimy, I just despise those people. And this idea of there's a way to make money in this opportunity, it does attract that negative space or those negative people. So it really doesn't matter if it's infomercials or Facebook, all the same stuff, whether it's funnels or scam artists. They're as old as time, and they'll continue on. It's our mission to kind of figure out how we can tell the good guys from the bad guys. So tell me more about the Seattle stuff. I sorry to interrupt you there.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think, again, to show, when I was learning marketing, again, I learned it by doing it, but also I read books that I guess the people before me used to be successful. And back then it was direct mail and how other people did it. And so I think that for anybody wanting to know how to do marketing, there's kind of two phases to that. It's understanding the fundamentals that are always work regardless of the distribution channel, then understanding the technology that you're using today to distribute the message. Like you said, Facebook is an absolute parallel to TV direct response, the same type of thing. And the important point to take away from that is the things that help make a TV infomercial successful would help make a Facebook ad successful too. And that's why I've been able to be successful in marketing, for over 30 years. So anyway, let's keep going with the story. Came out to Seattle. We made this show, just a real quick aside. My friend was in the commercial fishing business. I liked fishing. He said, hey, let's go up to Alaska and do some long lining. We did that at a Kodiak, the boat we were in. You've seen the deadliest catch on TV. We ran into a storm. Our boat sank. We had to be rescued by the Coast Guard. And we came back in. I remember making a phone call when we got in. We were at the Coast Guard station in Kodiak. And I called up, and we were testing our stock show that weekend. And I called up, and we had spent like $4,000 on TV media on a national cable station. It doesn't even exist today. And I remember calling into the telemarketing company, and they had received 12,000 in orders. So it was kind of like one of the worst days coupled with one of the best days. Because one of the things, from being in business and running advertising, if you have an initial success, then that you can take that and ride it and make it much bigger. So that became the first kind of success in Seattle. And then this is where it ties together. I'd done a couple other little projects, weight loss and things like that. But I told you the story about my dad passing away from a heart attack. So I was always interested in nutrition. And you've heard people say it's important to follow your passion. And so I was very passionate about how you could stay healthy, prevent heart disease through what you ate. And I actually got into juicing. And this was in 1989. And my brother and I started a company called Trillium Health Products. But our main product was the Juice Man juicer and the Bread Man bread machine. And basically we were teaching people to eat a more of a plant-based diet as a way to good health, not telling them to be vegetarians or anything. And juicing was an easy way to get people there. So you talk about the success. We were in the right time at the right place with the right product, and that business grew from 0 to 75 million in 3.5 years. And we sold it in 1993 to a company in Chicago called Sultan Housewares. And I took a year off, just, wanted to rest and recuperate because it was like riding a bucking bronco with that fast growth. And at one time we had 160 employees, and you've owned businesses and you know everything that comes with a fast growing business.
A pure delight, I'm sure. A pure delight. Yeah. Yeah, believe me, the year off was well earned. I've been there, done that. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a call from my former business partner in the juice business. And he said, there's a small company here called Optiva Corporation. They have a consumer product and they're interested in doing the type of marketing that you did. And it turns out Optiva Corporation was the makers of the Sonicare toothbrush. And I went over and spoke with them, and I ended up investing some money in the company and actually making a half-hour infomercial. And the problem with Sonicare toothbrush was it was a $150 product, and nobody knew what Sonic technology was. And if they would have put this on the retail shelf, nobody would buy it because the most expensive toothbrush out there were $2, $3. Maybe an Interplaque cost $29 or something. So they had a really educational fence that they had to get over.
Well, let me just jump in there, Rick, because I think that is a point that a lot of entrepreneurs, especially those brand builders out there, don't fully recognize. Just getting your product into big box or just getting it on a retail shelf or just putting it online doesn't mean it's going to sell, especially when you have this education issue, right? If your comparison item is $3 and your item is $150, and the person doesn't really have any clarity as to what's the difference, you got a problem. And so from my standpoint, I think it's a big point to say, that product that we all now know, everybody knows Sonicare now, right? It's super famous. It's in every, it's in Costco, it's in all these big boxes. It's only because of the pioneering that you guys did at that time. So I asked the listeners just to go back in time before anybody knew what Sonicare was and try to imagine that, because that was a different time. And go ahead and take us through that journey, Rick.
Yeah, and let me back up for 1 second, because I want to. There's another common thread between the juicer business and Sonicare and things. And one of the things I have for anybody listening today, if they go to my website rickcesari.com, they can download something that I call the 5 keys to building a great brand. And number one on there, and this isn't going to be news to you, Steve, is you have to identify a unique selling proposition. And what it is about your product that makes it unique compared to every other product out there. And in the case of the juicer, now we didn't invent juicing. We didn't invent a juicer. There were 2 giant companies called Braun and Krups out there making juicers, but they focused on the features of the product. They had a half horsepower motor, stainless steel parts, dishwasher safe, things like that. And what made us successful in the juicing business is that we said, what can we do to make our juicer different? So we focused on the benefits of drinking the juice. And we said, if you buy this machine and drink the juice, you'll have more energy, your cholesterol will be lower. And it was really just a, differentiator between our product and what was out there. And that message is what made all the difference. Now take that over into the Sonicare toothbrush, which we were talking about. What did Sonicare do different? Sonicare had something called Sonic technology. Well, what was the benefit of that? They could clean beyond the bristles. So basically, we had the ability to reach the nooks and crannies between the teeth that other toothbrushes and the market couldn't. And so in our advertising, we could talk about how using this product could really help you reverse gum disease. And that was the basis when we started doing our direct response advertising, how we got people to respond to the message. And so again, unique selling proposition and positioning are 2 of the first things you should always think about when you're trying to build a brand.
Now we're going to be sure we get those links to your website in the show notes and so forth. And you call this the 5 steps or 5
keys to building a great brand. And I'll go through them as we go through and talk about some of the products and how they apply.
How did the next step at Sonicare, once you got introduced to Optiva and so forth, what was the steps?
Yeah, so what we did is, I've always been a big believer. Here's another lesson your listeners can take away. I've always been a big believer in selling through education. In other words, not hard sell. You have to buy this, hit people over the head with price. I've always positioned my products in most cases as the top end of from a pricing standpoint, because just a mentality, you can always go down in price and then try to build the marketing story to support that higher price. So with the Sonicare toothbrush, one of the things we did is we basically interviewed. We went to a dental show down in the Moscone Center in San Francisco. Sonicare had a booth there. This is something that works to this day. If you are at a trade show and you have a booth, if you go down there and take a video camera and video people that come up to your booth and just talk to them and ask questions, you'll find out more about your product and what people like and what they don't like. And we were able to go down there and interview some of the top dentists and periodontists in the world. And we use that as the basis for the marketing message with Sonicare. And really, it was really also about building up credibility. That's another key thing. People want to believe you have a good product, but you need to really establish the credibility. So if you hear the dean of the Harvard Dental School saying, "I really like this product, it's different, it works," that's a much more believable message than you as the product owner saying, "Hey, this is a great product, it really works." So we went down there, got a lot of great testimonials from third-party experts, consumers. We turned it into a half-hour infomercial that was very educational. It was basically talked about where gum disease came from, how you could fix it, and how Sonicare could help you do that. And again, it was educating the consumer. Once they saw that, they basically called up and bought the product. And again, just to put this in perspective of the time frame we're talking about, this was before any e-commerce. And Sonicare, using the direct response marketing, grew from 0 to about 120 million in the first probably 3 or 4 years I was working with them. It's a combination of two things: a great product. You can't do this if your product doesn't live up to everything you say. So it always helps to have a great product. And then being able to use a successful marketing method.
Well, and it's that combination of the two, but it's just a great reminder that, different marketing methods can lead to substantial scale. So many people are in this mindset of, well, if it's not on the internet, it has no value. But still to this day, internet, as of about right now, is still only around 10% of retail sales. That's 90% of stuff is done in other marketing channels. Big box, even still today, people order stuff on the telephone, everyone. It happens, and there's a variety of different techniques. As you were talking, one of the things that I reflected on is, today's infomercial is just a webinar, right? It's just, there really is no difference between a well-produced and organized webinar, assuming that, is put out there, and a really nice infomercial, which obviously still exists today. So
I agree. It's basically a sales presentation. And if people want my magic formula for creating a successful infomercial, and we can go into a lot more detail, but I learned this at Dale Carnegie when I was a teenager. I don't know if, again, you might have heard of Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. And they had a formula for when you give a speech. It's like, tell them what you're going to say it, and tell them what you said. And it's a simple formula, but I followed that. And there's other things that obviously make it successful, but that's a basic format. And you talk about a webinar. Well, let's just tie it back to something you mentioned before. Some of these brand TV spots, you have no idea what the heck they're talking about. And even when it's over, it's like, what was that an advertisement for? And if you look at the advertising we did for GoPro, we started every GoPro out with a brand logo. So we're telling them what we're going to say. It's about GoPro. There was user-generated footage in the middle, and we ended it with the GoPro brand logo, but also then an offer for the people to do something. We'll get into that story in more detail in a few minutes.
Yeah, well, and this is the great part. Each of these stories has a common thread. And for those awesomers out there listening and the really expert marketeers, you should be paying close attention, because, Rick is a guy through his influence and kind of his systems and understanding, he's been able to build significant brands we've all heard of: Sonicare, George Foreman Grill, GoPro, OxyClean, these types of brands, which are, just the fact that you could say one of those and have pretty much everybody know what they are is extraordinary. But the fact that it's happened again and again shows there's a systemic process that Rick brings to the table. So I'm super excited. So as Sonicare grew, 0 to 120 million in just the first, few years, several years, whatever it was, what was the tipping point for Sonicare to kind of just completely blow up and become ubiquitous?
Actually, that's kind of a funny story, and you can relate to this. They basically, and again, I'm a big believer in multi-channel marketing. And again, I want to basically build on something you said before. I'm also a big believer in making a product available anywhere the consumer wants to buy it, and make it so, we were selling things on TV, right now it needs to be on TV, online, Amazon, and if it makes sense, in retail. And again, we can talk about that in a minute. You want to basically let consumers buy a product where they're comfortable. But really the tipping point, believe it or not, sometimes things happen unexpectedly. And Oprah basically had a Sonicare. She had somehow got one from a friend or purchased it. She actually brought it out on her show, and she said, "This will make your gums hum." And it basically, something as simple as that, it wasn't planned, basically is kind of exploded into kind of mainstream America. And then, the conclusion to the Sonicare story is that they continued to have high growth, and Philips Electric bought the company for $500 million about 8 or 9 years after they started up. So
amazing.
Yeah, from startup to sale that quickly.
Well, if you can't make $500 million inside of 10 years, you're just not doing the job right. That's my opinion. Well done. So I love that story. And we've got a couple other stories we're going to stack into here for the awesomers out there listening. But we're going to take another quick break, and we're going to be right back after this.
Empower. The name says it all. Connecting e-commerce entrepreneurs with great people, ideas, systems, and the services needed to stay business dynamic and to grow. Empowery is a network, a cooperative venture of tools and resources to make you better at what you do, because we love what you do. We are you. Visit empowery.com to learn more.
Okay, gang, Steve Simonson, we're back again on awesomers.com, and today we are getting schooled by a brand expert, Rick Cesari.
Correct.
Oh, Lord, my third time's a charm. And I have to tell you, it was a 50-50 run there. It was my name recognition is getting worse. Maybe it has to do with my age. I don't know. But Rick, you've just, I think shared an extraordinary story about the Sonicare, kind of 0 to 8 or 9 years, $500 million exit, and extraordinary success, along with some serendipity along the way, right? If Oprah was a tipping point, cool. A lot of people go, oh, well, they got lucky. But luck is a matter of the preparation, right? It's all the preparation. It's all the energy. It's all the fact that however Oprah got her hands on that thing, it was a great product, like you said in the beginning, and it did, in fact, get to her. Whatever method, obviously it was related to some of the other sales channels you were doing, and she loved it enough on her own, so it wasn't a paid campaign, to just endorse it and kind of make that pronouncement on the air, and boom, from there it was history. I love that story. And I'm hoping you'll share now a little bit about the George Foreman grill, because that is one of my favorites. I've owned at least one of those, probably more than one over my time. And to me, it's another fascinating example of how these brands kind of come to life.
Yeah, so that's a great story. And actually the timing's perfect, because the company that bought our juicer business, Trillium Health Product, was called Sultan Housewares. And Sultan, one of the reasons they bought our business was that they had retail distribution. That was their main business. And they dealt with all the brick and mortar stores. But they also wanted to know how we did the marketing for the Juice Man. And they brought me 2 products. One was a slanted grill, and the other one was a homemade bagel maker. And I
Couple
said,
of winners, couple of winners.
yeah, exactly. And so the story behind the George Foreman grill is really interesting, because when it was first developed, it was designed as a taco maker. And the reason that it was slanted was that the idea was you cook hamburger meat on it. It was at the edge of the table. They had a little spatula. You'd put your taco shell down below the lip of the machine, and you'd put the taco meat in there. And that's how it was being marketed before we started working with Sultan. And obviously, they weren't doing very good sales-wise. It just was a non-starter.
Yeah, so none of us have ever heard of the slanted grill taco maker, so that's a pretty good indicator. Yes, carry on.
So it's interesting. At the time, we started working with them, and there was also a really good marketing person in place at Sultan named Barb Westfield, and she's a co-author of my new book, which we'll talk about, called Building $1 Billion Brands. She's been the CMO at Sultan, at Homedics, at Wolfgang Puck, and she knows more about brick and mortar distribution than just about anybody I've ever met. Anyway, she was the CMO there. Her and I put our heads together, and George Foreman had just won the heavyweight championship, and he was the oldest person to regain the championship. I think he was 46 years old. He knocked out Michael Moore, and his agent was looking for a product for George to endorse. And Barb had mentioned this to me, and I said, well, I think that would be good with the grill. And because George was very big, and was famous for eating hamburgers, so we made the connection, came up with changed the name from whatever it was for the taco maker to people know it as the George Foreman grill, but it was the lean, mean, fat reducing grilling machine, which you talk about a mouthful for a name. That was the name of the product, and that's why people started referring to it as the George Foreman grill. And
I wonder if that domain is still available. The lean, mean, grill and fat making
lean, mean, fat reducing grilling machine. And then we also came up with a tagline, "Knocks out the fat," to tie in with George Foreman. And really, that was the unique selling proposition of that product. We mentioned unique selling proposition before. You could grill your favorite foods, hamburgers, bacon, and you could see the grease and fat channel away from the food. And so people thought or believed that they could eat their favorite foods, and it was a little bit healthier than if it was to sit in a pan with all the fat. And we basically visually, showed that. We showed the fat channeling away. We showed cooking hamburgers in a frying pan and then sitting in the fat, and really just making that comparison. And George was, just an awesome, first of all, I love the name of your podcast, or that you've mentioned, awesome.
Awesomers, yeah, baby.
Awesomers and awesome. I use awesome all the time. George was just an awesome spokesperson. And basically the combination of really showing what this product could do, not only removing the fat, it was the first grill that grilled on both sides at the same time. So you could cook a hamburger in twice the speed. And so when we made our half-hour TV show, which could be a half-hour webinar or, an ad on Facebook, the two things we showed were removing the fat and cooking more quickly. And those were the differences in our product versus the other grills out there at the time. And then George was a way to basically open doors and kind of tying a spokesperson to a product.
But it's not a direct logical association, right? It's not like there's very few people, I think, today that would say, hey, I'm thinking of a grilling item and I'm going to go find the heavyweight champion or the mixed martial arts champion. That's just not a logical thing. That's a genius and extraordinary kind of reach to put those two things together.
Yeah, and George turned out to be just an amazing spokesperson. People really loved him because when he regained, you see heavyweight boxing champions or whatever, and they have these giant, entourages, and our mixed martial arts champion. George used to travel around with one person, and he, his backstory was really interesting. When he lost, part of his fame came because he lost a famous fight to Muhammad Ali in Zaire, Africa. And he basically went into retirement for 10 years. And then when he came out and won again, that got him quite a bit of notoriety. But in that time, he became a minister, and every Sunday he would be teaching a sermon in downtown Houston. And he had a very good story that was to promote, and he was a very likable guy. And just kind of a funny thing, in addition to doing the television, we also did a lot of QVC. And one of the things, you get, again, at the time, this was our instant feedback. You would get instant feedback when a certain sales message or something happened. So every time George took a bite of a hamburger, the phones would light up. And for whatever reason, when he was eating, it would help generate more sales. And I don't know the psychological reason behind that, but it really did. So every commercial we made from that point on, we showed more of George eating. And, we basically used what worked and used it in our advertising.
That is a fascinating detail. And again, one of those counterintuitive ideas, if we're writing marketing scripts, or writing commercial scripts or webinar scripts or infomercial scripts, how very few of us are going to go, you know what, let's make sure we get the subject to eat a certain number of times, right? That's probably the least attractive idea we could come up with. But George Foreman, because he was such a big personality and a big guy, he just made things look. I remember these commercials. I remember thinking to myself, George Foreman has no idea how that grill is made. Yeah, it's got his name on it. He's sitting there and he's as happy as a guy can be, and he's showing us how to cook a hamburger. This is a crazy thing. And yet, sure enough, on my countertop, there's at least one George Foreman grill there for at least 10 years. I don't know. It's a really amazing, and we felt perfectly fine about it. Hey, Ed, bear with me just a minute.
I'm a bit early. I'll jump off.
Okay. All right. We'll back up just one step there.
We probably have enough for 2 episodes.
We do actually. Before we go back, I'm gonna break it right here for a second. We probably should break this into another episode to do the GoPro and OxyClean, because I think all these story details are amazing, and they deserve to be told. But I want to make sure we get this point about George in the hopper here. So,
sure.
All right. So I just want to make sure I think of our break point here. Okay. So my memory of the George Foreman grill, it dates back, I don't even know what year were these sold, the heavy time of George Foreman grills.
Well, we launched it in 1996, and so from probably 97 through 99 were the big growth years for that product, or probably 97 through 2001, to be honest with you.
It was such a powerful commercial, and again, it's counterintuitive to think of coaching up the star to go, hey, make sure you eat a bite, here, and we're going to do close-ups, right? That the opposite way that you would script something is what actually ended up working. And this is one of those marketing lessons. Rick already said he doesn't know the psychological reason. I certainly don't. But when you find, and this is the ultimate lesson, when you find something that works, regardless of why it works, the why is quite irrelevant, you keep using it, right? And that's ultimately what you guys decided to do. In every subsequent commercial, every subsequent infomercial, you made sure George was chomping down on a big bite.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that goes back to something, again, that's relevant back then, but relevant today, even more relevant, is being able to test your commercials and finding out what works and what doesn't work. And when you do find that one thing that works, I've always found in all of these projects and that we've been talking about and the ones we're still going to talk about, you kind of find the key that people respond to. And once you find that key, you can then take that and build a really, really big business, leveraging that one idea or the one thing that gets people excited and gets them to respond. It's not always obvious what that is, but once you find that, and you do that through trial and error. I mean, nobody's an overnight success. You test shows. I mean, one of the interesting things about George's show is a perfect example. The very first infomercial we tested didn't work. And we thought it'd be really cool. Again, and this is an important lesson. we thought it'd be really cool to start the infomercial out. We called up HBO and bought 15 seconds where George was knocking out Michael Moore. And we started out the show with a boxing sequence. And that was not really understanding who our target demographic was, which was primarily women. And women, I'm making generalizations here, but a lot of women do not like boxing or are violent. So we were turning off our primary target at the very beginning of the show. So we came in, re-edited the show, took out the boxing, and we actually raised the price from $59 to $79. And we did those two things, and the product took off. And again, it's a function of testing.
First of all, the lesson of testing. You've heard Rick, who's built these, massive, massive brands, and we're going to talk more about his book here in a minute. But these brands that have, such extraordinary power and, have the potential to be billion-dollar brands. And he still is talking about testing and talking about making mistakes, by the way, right? This idea, I'm sure that HBO wasn't like, oh yeah, you can have this footage for free, right? How much did they charge you for the footage?
$15,000 to buy the footage.
So they had to pay a big amount of money. They put that lead in. It turned off their viewers, which obviously they figured out subsequent to that first ad running. And was there any point after that first commercial you guys were like, oh, I guess this isn't going to work. Let's roll it out and forget about it?
There's always that thought process when you're testing a new product, because again, this is the very beginning. There weren't a lot of success. The product that evolved into the George Foreman grill wasn't successful. And that's really where perseverance pays off. And the CEO of the company could have said, we tested, it didn't work. And we just said, well, let's give it another try. And fortunately, when we made the changes and brought it back out, it worked well. So again, it's another lesson of not giving up and basically following through, and look at where it could lead you.
Just imagine if the CEO or Rick himself or anybody on the team at the time had said, you know what? I thought this was a good idea, but it turns out people don't like boxing and cooking after all. And that whole thing, this whole genre that we all now know very well, the George Foreman grill, that could have been gone. It could have never existed. Yet by simply sticking to it and then having the being humble enough to say, what did we do wrong? What can we do better? How can we improve this? Yeah. That is enough to be able to persevere. And I think that's a big lesson. You guys weren't caught up in the ego of, no, this thing is perfect. We just need to get those stupid customers to pay better attention. You guys retooled the thing, right?
No, absolutely. And that's an important point you bring up right there is, and that's number 3 on my list of 5 keys to building the brand. We talked about USP, unique selling proposition, positioning. Number 3 is always listen to the customer. And basically, you'll find out more, and we'll talk about how that plays a role in all the different products. But their customer is the best source of feedback to tell you what they like about the product, what they don't like, and how you can make improvements. And really, the customers were sending us a message saying that they didn't like what we were doing. And we were able to talk to some of them and really identify what our target market was and make changes and then make the project work.
So this, again, just trying to tie parallels into modern day or relevant things for the awesomers out there listening. When you are thinking about developing a product and you start your research typically on Amazon, because that's the easiest and most likely place to begin a search, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at the reviews. Right? And that is listening to customers. So you get in there and you look at the good reviews and you see, oh, what's positive about this thing? And then you also go look at the negative reviews. It goes, how's this thing falling down? And if you can enhance the positives or at least retain the positives and eliminate the negatives, you've already incrementally made, an improvement in the product, and now it has a potential to live. But fundamentally, I couldn't agree more with Rick's assertion that if you ask customers, they will tell you. It's so often we are running around and, we don't know why this doesn't work. We don't know why this doesn't work. But you started your process with asking customers. You talked about this at the trade show with the cameras and talking to the dentist. If you engage your audience, the earlier on, the better. I think you're going to be really surprised at some of the things they tell you.
Yeah, and to this day, whenever we start working with a company for the first time or a new product for the first time, the very first thing I ask them is, I want to speak to some of your customers. Do you have a database? Some people are just 100% on Amazon. They might not, have a database, but as many companies do, and the very first thing I'll do is basically my team will call up, set up where we talk to 10 to 15 people. We'll bring them to a house, and I'll sit down and interview these people. And really, it tells me a lot of the things I need to know about the product. And again, you meant what people like, what they don't like. And I really pay attention to, in this case, negative reviews on Amazon, but the things people don't like, and how can we overcome those objections, or the reasons why they might not buy the product.
Yeah, it's so often a surprise in what is really motivating and pushing these customers to make decisions. I remember a quick story, and because of Rick's extraordinary experience, we're probably going to end up doing a back-to-back episode or a subsequent episode to talk about GoPro and OxyClean. But just a quick little tiny story from my background. One time we launched a product. It's actually provided by a manufacturer, and it had huge apparent value. I mean, it was just really big and thick and luxurious, and it seemed very clear that this had high apparent value. And at the time, I was still learning, and my weak mind says, I want to sell a ton of this, so let's really lower the price, and let's get at a low price. So we had this really huge, big, beautiful, high apparent value item at a very, very low price, and it would not sell. And after a month or two, and by the way, with considerable focus and marketing energy and all the direct marketing and things that we did to try to support it, it still would not sell. And so finally, we just put it up to kind of not just a regular price, but probably a regular price plus 30 or 40%, because we were mad at the product as if it was responsible somehow. Right. And believe it or not, and of course Rick already knows, or he can infer the end of the story, the sales blew up. The product started selling, and it reminded me of that story because of what you said. Not only did you retool the episode, you changed the price from $59 to $79. And I think most marketeers would have said, let's change it from $59 to $29 and see if that helps. And that is not always what the customer needs to see, and that's not what makes them happy.
Yeah, so that's a great story, and again, it further endorses one of the things. Whenever I bring a product to market, I always, and again, this comes from research, talking to people, whatever, but I always try to launch it at the highest reasonable price, because it's very easy to come down, but it's hard to go back up. And then you're testing really what the marketplace would be willing to pay for the product. And there's another element of human psychology here, where there's a certain price point where people think, well, it must be cheap or not a good product if it's a certain price, but by putting it up at a more of a luxury price point, they feel better about buying the product. And it doesn't work, that I'm not saying this works across the board, go and raise your prices on all your products, but it's something you should, when you're launching a new product, absolutely test different price points, including the higher ones.
Well, and the other thing it helps you do is it helps you pay for marketing, and it helps you pay for high customer service.
That's absolutely true.
Right. And because you become embittered when a customer is like, hey, I have a problem with this. And you're like, hey, man, you paid such a low price. Why are you bothering me for? Right. But if they pay a fair, reasonable price, then you should be able to offer that support. You should be able to support the marketing. So yeah, that's a circle.
That's a hugely important point. Almost every product we talk about is, in order for them to be a success, they had to be at a high enough price point so there were enough margin dollars to pay for the advertising, to provide the great customer service, all the things that you need to do. And, you look at companies that are very successful, and I'll just pull one out of the air, Starbucks. Underneath of everything else, there's huge margins when they sell you an espresso and with milk in it. And that huge margin is what facilitates them being able to be a global brand. And that's one of the very first things when I'm looking at a product, we kind of do in a financial analysis, and the numbers have to work, because sometimes you might have the best product in the world, but there isn't enough margin dollars between your cost of manufacturing and what you can sell it for, that that's going to enable you to have advertising dollars and marketing dollars and customer service dollars, and we can eliminate a lot of products that way. And so every once in a while you find the right product with the right margins, and usually that the consumer likes, or a mass consumer will like, and those are the ones you can usually turn into big businesses.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Rick, we're against the clock, so I want to have you back and get part 2 of this extraordinary journey. I love it. I know awesomers out there love it. Will you join me again and do a part 2 with me?
Yeah, I'd love to. We still got a lot of great things to talk about.
We sure do. We're going to get into the book. We're going to get into all the links. And awesomers, you'll be able to go into the show notes and get the details we've already covered so far. There's so much here. This is really exciting stuff. And I thank you again for your time today, Rick. It is really a great pleasure to kind of recount these historic moments in marketing and branding with you.
Great. Thanks, Steve. You've been really easy to talk to, and I really appreciate being able to share experience and knowledge with your listeners.
Of course, it's our pleasure. Awesomers, we'll be right back after this.
Hey, Amazon Marketplace professionals, this is Parsimony ERP, and we get one question over and over. Can you please tell me exactly what Parsimony does? Well, we'll try, but this is only a 30-second spot, so we're going to have to hurry. Connect to your Seller Central account and pull all the new orders. Enter the orders with all customer data. Enter all of the Amazon fees and charges. Store them at the item level. Generate profit and loss reports at the SKU level. Automatically generate income statements. Handle multiple companies. Handle multiple brands. Handle multiple currencies. Facilitate budgets and forecasts. Store all customer interactions in a sophisticated CRM system. Manage your supply chain. Budget and task management. Maintain an audit log. Hey, you get it. That's Parsimony, PARSIMONY.com. Parsimony.com. We've got that.
Well, I tell you what, we have delivered yet again, I think, something very special. And Rick has, what a great sport to come on for a second time. So this is just part 1, by the way, of our 2-part series with Rick Cesari. I know I mispronounce his name about every 2 seconds, so my apologies to Rick. But his experience and his knowledge and just his sense of humor and his, just kind of a fun guy to be around. Really, really amazing fella. And we're sure glad he joined us. Today was just the first half of that 2-part series, so don't forget to join us tomorrow where we go into the next bit as well. And, today we covered, again, Juice Band, Sonicare, and George Foreman Grill, but tomorrow we're going to dive deep into the other 2 really cool brands that you've probably heard of, which are GoPro and OxyClean. All of these names are such amazing brands, and your chance to kind of talk to one of the key architects and engineers of these billion-dollar brands is something that I think is quite special, and I feel privileged to just be on the other line with him. And I was lucky enough to have him come to the Catalyst 88 Mastermind group recently and talk to the team there in Seattle at length, and it was just a really great experience. So anyway, this has been a great episode. I can't wait to have you join us tomorrow as well. Don't forget, this is episode number 55 of the Awesomers.com podcast series, and all you have to do is go to Awesomers.com/55 to get all the show notes, details, and bonus links and things like that. Well, we've done it again, everybody. We have another episode of the Awesomers podcast ready for the world. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you've enjoyed our program today. Now's a good time to take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this podcast. Heck, you could even leave a review if you wanted. Awesomers around you will appreciate your help. It's only with your participation and sharing that we'll be able to achieve our goals. Our success is literally in your hands. Thank you again for joining us. We are at your service. Find out more about me, Steve Simonson, our guest, team, and all the other Awesomers involved at Awesomers.com. Thank you again.